Happy to discuss or answer any questions that I can.
So, Pat, you said there's not going to be construction management, or
Yeah, so the incidental budget will cover for some construction management. So I plan to take, since it's the size and scale of the project and what it is as far as complexity, I'll have a larger role than during the large facility upgrade.
okay,
So we'll essentially use them for documentation recording. So that I do anticipate a construction manager, but more in an administrative role than day to day. I'll handle all the day to day.
will that be campus?
Possibly, we're going to use our process to determine what the
Gotcha.
consultant is with it. They have the most experience, so my
You're
guess
familiar
is
with the whole project, also.
yeah,
So
yeah, and
that makes
they've helped
sense.
with the bids and everything. So I'm assuming that will make sense, but we're gonna put some scopes together and get some estimates and discuss that. But
Do you have a planned start date and the duration of the project by chance?
that's adjusted a little bit just because of the timing post bid. So
Right.
I'd say we've slid about a month. The goal would be to get it done before next snow season.
Okay.
And I think that's still an attainable goal at this point. So before next November.
What was the percentage of your contingency? I know I saw the amount, but didn't do the math yet.
Percent base is pretty low, and again, it's tied to the complexity of the project not being very high. There's less unknowns
Right.
than you would have on a standard project. It's on the footprint of an existing building, so we felt comfortable bringing that down very low percentage at this point, just based on the conditions that we're seeing out there and what we think there is for risk. The other aspect, as I've been going through this managerially and looking at it, is by taking the portion of self-performance that we have, we could very easily phase portions of that if we had financial issues. And what I mean by that is there's components of the pavement we could do a very basic level and hold off
Right.
until another time to do further point. It could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in material costs that we could change the timing on without having a contract obligation implication. So I think that is going to function as an additional level of coverage to possibly be a relief valve if something did come up, which is another factor in the low contingency.
So I guess the only other area, not really concerned, but I'm curious as to. I understand that you want to do the cement walls versus the wood. Okay. What's the life expectancy of the wood versus the concrete? Because there's $170,000 savings by
Yeah,
going
it's been
with
it's been a big question this week, and it is one of the bigger savings items. No design professionals have been willing to give me a number. Right? It's nice to have a finite number to say this lasts 10 years longer, this lasts 20 years longer. They have indicated that because of the factors, what type of wood, how thick is the wood, all of these things, because we don't have it designed, because it's only an alternate, it would have to come from a manufacturer as the proposed design. Without some of those specific particulars, they aren't able to assign a number. The biggest factor, I think, if it designed in a certain way, the longevity, so the life expectancy could be very similar, but the durability is not going to be the same. So if you have any bumps knocking into it, pushing against it, things like that, the concrete is much more durable during its life in how it reacts to any sort of punishment or wear and tear that comes up against it, which is, I think, where it's definitely superior at this point. So it's kind of a tough question to answer. That's why I haven't gotten an answer on it. I have asked 3 different entities for a more direct answer. Some don't respond. Other folks say they can't answer it without a full design of the wood. So it's not very clean cut as to exactly what that answer is. But if you just think about the surface of those things and say a loader bumps into it or runs into it, how a piece of wood would react versus a piece of concrete. And that's what I mean by the durability of
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
walls overall.
So those walls have been up since what, 1984,
These have, yeah.
and no loaders have run into it since you've been there, have they?
No, you can see some of the repairs in this picture where sometimes you do hit the upper portions more so than the bottom. But I can tell you that I don't know exactly how thick these boards were, but some of them are very thin. and some of them are broken and there's salt coming out the sides in different spots. So I think you're right. This is over 40 years old, and it's been okay. But it's definitely in a more fragile state than I think a concrete wall would be at the same situation.
With the concrete walls, did they give you an estimate to like reseal and maintain those concrete walls over time?
I think they don't recommend any special treatment. I'm not sure exactly what they use for the bar, the steel inside the wall, that can be a factor. But other than that, when they put the concrete up, they put a sealer that penetrates at least an inch or two into it that prevents stuff. So I think the maintenance would be the same here, which is part of
Redoing
the
that
durability.
sealer every so often?
Yeah. I think it's only every 5 years, but I'm not sure if they would recommend it more often on this. I'm just thinking about floors in the building.
Yeah, or just how much it is to do it.
Oh, the sealer?
Yeah.
I would say less than 5,000. I've done large sections of floors. It's all per square foot.
Okay.
So the square footage of the wall.
So
in
not a
here
terrible difference then in the maintenance of
I don't
the wood
think
versus the
I
concrete.
don't think so, because the wood, you wouldn't really do much to it. But like I said, this stuff here is definitely in quite a fragile state. If you go up and look at it and touch it, it's
Okay.
For the wood, for the new one, do we not know what kind of wood they plan on using? Is it going to be different than the current that we have? Are they going to use a cheaper one? Was that disclosed in the bids?
no, there wasn't particulars like that provided.
So
about
that $170,000, is it contingent on a very specific type of wood we're using, or could we get something sturdier?
that. We haven't discussed that. Now, I would have to see what they propose. So it would start by saying, okay, can you give me the particulars about what you've
Yeah, my
put in here?
fear would be a contractor coming in looking to get wood and then save their bottom line by using a cheaper one, which then, bites us in the butt later on down the road.
Yeah, it would have to be
You have to be
cycled and reviewed by the design team. It would have to be deemed adequate. They wouldn't be able to just do that automatically and still only give us 170,000. So if we headed in that direction, the next step would be to get the particulars on it. Given that it's an alternate, I don't know exactly what the sequence would be to get to that point, but we couldn't get to it. We wouldn't let that happen, essentially, is
But
what you're
if-
describing.
If we went with the wood instead for the amendment, would that, and then making sure that we're using proper materials, how far out would that push the beginning construction of the project?
That's hard to tell. It shouldn't be significant, but I can't really speak to it without talking to the general contractor about what they would.
So
Think.
they didn't spell out any specific type of wood.
No. The specs talk about what the structural wood needs to be, but whether the push wall itself is actually thicker or bigger because it's not a design item, it's an alternate. I don't know those particulars
Gotcha.
right now.
Do you know by chance, just in a ballpark, how much we paid on repairs and maintenance for the current barn in the last 5 to 10 years? Because that might answer some of our questions in terms of maintenance on the wood barn.
In the last 5 to 10 years, so 10 years ago, there was a roof replacement on it that was a significant cost.
Sure.
Well over 50,000. I don't have those exact records just because haven't compiled them that way.
Sure.
And then I would say year over year for the last 5 years, probably average 2,500 a year, I would say, in just minor boards and fasteners being replaced and different plates that have sort of sistered together with things like the repair that I showed in that picture. I would roughly say 2,500 a year at least for the last 5 years.
So
minimum.
more for consideration, our biggest concerns are going to be around the roof as being the bigger maintenance cost for this building in the next however many years. So that metal roof versus shingles is probably a big deal when it comes to the longevity of that. Aside from just the wood and the concrete, but it doesn't seem like from a maintenance standpoint, there's that much of a difference year over year, but the risk is higher.
Yeah, year over year, the maintenance of wood versus concrete and that thing wouldn't be significantly different.
Sure.
Correct. Yeah. Based on my experience.
When we
Thank
have
you so much. Sorry.
when we have to make repairs, do we use our own people for that, or do we have to contract out?
For the repairs we've needed on this, we utilized our own staff for it. We have guys that have carpentry skills. For the roof, that was hired out.
Pat, you talked about the savings from doing the self-work. You may have partially answered this by talking about phasing of the project. When you factored in the cost savings, did you factor in any missed revenue opportunity from the folks who would be working, excuse me, on this not being able to do county or other revenue work?
Yeah, we would not be entertaining that. So the scope of the site work, not many of the items in it hit critical path for the structure of the building, right? Because the building's going on the other one, the critical path for installing the new salt facility is the demo of the existing building and the construction of the new one in its spot. So there isn't really any site work prep. Therefore, those items can go and we can do it at our leisure. So there's a flexible schedule, and we might have talked about this at a certain point.
Yep.
But because the items that we're going to self-perform don't hit the critical path of the project, we have flexibility. And with that flexibility, we're able to make sure we accomplish all of our revenue goals and our maintenance work, and then perform these duties as they're able to fit in the schedule without having impact to those
Got it.
types of things.
Got it. I was very surprised with the concrete walls being only 170,000 left. And I was also very surprised with the life expectancy of the wood versus the concrete, because I would have, I mean, what they at least projected based on the bid responses, I don't remember the number, but it seemed like it might have been only like 5 or 7 years. It was a very
Yeah.
low number. So I can see why moving forward with the concrete would be important, because on one hand, it's a lot of money, but on the other hand, it'll still last at least another 5 to 7 years over the wood, which seems to make sense to do that for that reason, plus the durability reason. One of the things I read in the insurance letter, it was like a mixed message in the insurance letter, because somewhere it said there could be an estimate of like 5 to 10 years of life on this building, albeit it's 40 years old, but 10 years would be an awful lot and have a lot of risk and potential maintenance. But, you know, the other piece of the insurance that I want to make sure is brought forward, because in the same time in that letter, it also said, given the state of this structure, if anything happened to it, it wouldn't be covered because it's already deteriorated beyond its life.
Yeah. With this, there was a lot of, right, we want to make sure that this is needed, right, not just wanted. So we had a structural assessment done by some folks, and that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
And that had different guidance, different generalities in it about the condition that they were able to observe without taking things apart and actually looking things. And the results of that letter, we now understand from talking to our agencies that insure us, but makes it become a known factor that there's major deficiencies for this. Therefore, a claim of insurance for its failure apparently would not be possible now that we have that knowledge.
And I think that's a very important aspect of how we move forward with that project, because if it's basically not insurable based on that structural assessment, I guess that there's two big reasons. One, you don't want to take a $600,000 grant. That's the second one ever awarded for a salt barn. Probably had a lot to do with the truck washout as well from an environmental perspective. But that would be a double whammy to give back the grant and then have insurance issues.
Well, but to clarify the insurance, when they looked into it, even without the letter, if it fell apart because of old age, it wasn't going to be covered. And then our max insurance coverage on the building, I think, was $257,000. So even in the miracle that insurance covered it,
It's not going to cover anything.
257, and this is 6 million is. So we can
Nothing.
kind of say that insurance is the.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that this is not a want, this is a need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's getting old.
Absolutely. The only question is the cement versus the wood walls. For
What-
a cost savings of 170.
And one other question for you, Pat. You know, there were some emails about the fireproofing standards from New York. Can we look into, is there any way to have this building be considered fireproof? to improve our bonding years from 15 to 30.
Yeah, we were looking into that. We were talking with Paul about
Yeah.
that. I don't know. I didn't get to the point of asking what would need to be
Yeah.
incorporated in order to get that. We didn't quite get to that point. Paul's been out of town a little bit. So yeah, we can definitely continue that conversation to see if there's any, minimal items that wouldn't have additional costs that we could utilize. But it was my understanding that the biggest portion in order to be fireproof, high percentage of the components of the building need to be completely fireproof, which would be metal or concrete. And even if we go with the concrete push walls, there's going to be a large portion of this that's wood framed on the top. So I'm not sure what that would look like, but it's
Yeah.
definitely
But something to
worth
look into,
considering.
the difference between a 15-year and a 30-year bond is significant to our finances.
Yep.
So if we got to spend just a little to get the 30-year, it can help pay for itself with that. Because I agree with John, like, it's needed, right? This has been a known
Yeah.
thing for a while.
You also bring up an interesting insurance point, and that concrete walls are going to make an insurance policy cheaper for this building as opposed to the wood. So there's going to be some long-term savings there, year over year.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to know what those numbers are.
Yeah, that's something I think it's pretty easily attainable. Our insurance provider's pretty quick to respond, so we should be able to
Okay.
get that. Yeah.